And welcome to This Is Not a Joke podcast. And today we're out of the studio with me, Terry Markey.
Myself, Philip Steels.
And me, Heidi Stemp.
And today we're in the Dock Carrick-On-Shannon, where we're going to be reviewing a show by Bertilsson and Eszter Tzabo. So why don't we crack on inside and we'll have a look about the place. Yeah. Here we are in the Dock Carrick-On-Shannon. So firstly, thanks very much for coming along. I kind of feel like where we're going to go with this podcast, where we're bringing our own kind of unique point of view to the table. Yeah. Obviously, my background is visual art, so I really appreciate you allowing me to bring you along to this exhibition, which I really love and I really think is an important exhibition that people should go and see. Yeah. I'm delighted to be here. So the artist that we went to see, first of all, was Bertilsson. And she's a Swedish artist, and she is the recipient of a Next Generation Award, which is a big deal because it's about the country investing in you as an artist, as a creative, as an individual, and they're willing to put their money where their mouth is. And her work is very much in the experiential, so it's an artwork that you enter into. It's probably kind of unconventional for people who are not familiar with an art viewing base. So you've got lots of kind of like toys and stuff, and she creates these characters that they hint of like fantasy and to dress up. But for me, I kind of get a lot of kind of like Japanese influence from them. So I'm looking at them and I'm kind of referring back to these kind of like golems and demons and things like that, because I find elements of the work to be quite sinister. But you found it sinister as well, Heidi.
I was incredibly uncomfortable walking around it, I have to say. And
do you think that was the sound or the visuals or the smell?
It was as you say, it wasn't an art exhibition as such in a classical form. It was an experience.
Yeah.
And you're walking through these very claustrophobic, narrow, cardboard with chicken wire filled corridors.
Yeah.
That is unsettling anyway.
Yeah.
And you've got these noises in the background.
Like flies, crows.
And creaking and
lip smacks and stuff.
Yeah, just very, very uncomfortable. And then like the imagery you were talking about where you saw, and I can see your Japanese kind of almost sort of manga-ish
kind of like
I
kind
can
of like
see
spirits
that.
And nymphs and things like that.
But it for me it verged very much to the precipice of comfort. I really was not. I did not want to be in there with the greatest respect in the world.
Yeah, I think it's it being in that kind of uncomfortable environment. It's an interesting thing for someone to make an environment uncomfortable for you.
Yes.
You know? And you got a lot of kind of domestic.
Well, what are we speaking about now? Are we talking?
Bertilsson. So the piece in Gallery 1, Gallery 2. So the kind of like cardboard maze kind of environment.
So from that, first of all, the way that's designed is that it's designed in a way, I think it's kind of claustrophobic.
Yeah.
So you automatically get the feeling when you're going through that it resembles almost like a trench or a bunker with a roof.
Yeah.
So when you do pass through that, every turn is an anxiety heightener. And you're wondering what's around the corner. And when you get through to find out that there's a dark room there, let's say, it's very interesting because the sound, because when I came into that, I thought it was going to be the visceral part of it that I would find most interesting or feel, but the sound, when I could hear the sound, is so crisp and clear.
Yeah.
It's, it just penetrates you.
I kind of felt like there was a big element of play. Right? Like if you've ever been made a den or as a kid, as a child, where you create an environment. So like you mentioned it was like the kids, you said that one of the areas was like a kids thing. I kind of felt like the whole area is like a kids thing, that it's like a den. It's like an imagined space where, like a child's imagination is like, when you hear people say that like, oh, play like Picasso would say that he wanted to paint like a child. or you know, it's not. It's really it's the freedom of a child. It's not really like a child. It's like the freedom of a child, because they afford themselves the right to imagine and to play, and to create a world for themselves. And I kind of feel like when you entered into that space, you were kind of like disarmed because of that, and then you have this kind of quite intimidating audio that creates the uncomfortable thing. So it's kind of playing on that kind of childhood thing, but there's something quite sinister, but also something quite erotic about parts of it that you can see. We talked about it in this space. You certainly felt like it was sexualized.
I think part of the uncomfort comes from when you see the child's toys, and then you see the sort of sexualization and the strange toys that's there.
What strange toys?
Well, one of the toys I seen in the box would have been like a rubber centipede, a long one.
Yeah, like from a pound shop.
Yeah, but I just, as a child, I would never grab that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, so there was 2 rooms, and it's like the mother's one was very dark and sinister, and there was elements of the mother still being a child in her room, and then in the child room there was element of the mother's cynicism by way of the objects left there.
Yeah.
One of them being the long centipede, like
Yeah.
that the child was supposed to play with the centipede. And it's just, for me, I was looking at the objects going, oh my God, I could never leave this in my child room, you know. And
Yeah.
wow,
I would totally play with insects and things like, and dinosaurs and stuff like that, and anything even remotely gooey or like.
But
you
I,
know.
but I think it's also, it's a girl playing with these toys, and it's an adult looking at a young girl, a sort of slightly prepubescent, not.
Do you think that gender is important?
Oh, 100%, because you know the girl was playing on a big inflatable ball, and she was bouncing on a big inflatable ball, and intrinsically there should be nothing wrong with that image, but it felt far too sexualized. Now, was that from the viewer? Was it the viewer that was imposing that on the scene, or was it actually there?
I think it was definitely there. I think there was an element brought to it intentionally. You know, that some the imagined play, the imagined character. Now, all the dresses and all the costumes of the character were around the space as well. So, like, when you're seeing the video, you're seeing the, I suppose, the documented evidence of the fantasy characters that occupied that space. They lived there, you know? Like,
But like they lived there for who and for what?
why does anybody live anywhere?
But no, there was something.
It could be just a disturbed childhood dream.
There was something odd. It was just something odd.
The work itself, I think that we had a pretty good discussion, right, about that kind of sinister thing. The structure of the work, like when you were asked to walk into the artwork, like, do you find that intimidating when you walk into the space?
Well, to start with, it's dark. So you know already you have uncertainty around the corner. So it's unnerving more than intimidating. It's unnerving. It's not intimidating until you're in there and you're sitting down.
So the second you walk into the space, you're challenged, essentially.
Yeah, I would say that. Yeah, fair
Interesting.
point.
And then Heidi found it very uncomfortable.
I honestly.
I know, I was teasing you.
Have never been as uncomfortable in an art show before.
See, I know I was teasing you about that earlier on, but that's a really interesting thing.
And
I'm sure the artists would be like really interested to hear that somebody had that kind of visceral reaction to work. Now, I think it was intentional. I think that was the intention of the artist, was to create that kind of uncertainty, that kind of uncomfortableness.
Yeah, there was definitely it was an unsettling atmosphere. I think if I was to use a word, it would be unsettling.
Okay.
From the sort of, as I say, the kind of bunkeresque corridors with even like the chicken wire and the sounds that she chose to amplify and focus on, and you know, even having a Barbarella film poster in a child's bedroom
That's yeah.
is, you know, it's quite sexualized, and it all just felt very, very uncomfortable. It felt like it shouldn't.
But
You
interesting.
shouldn't be there. There was something.
Yeah,
not,
well, a lot of the time, an artist will take something and put it out of its regular context, and we'll ask the viewer or ask the audience to look at this thing in an objective way outside of its context.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think I love that type of work. I'm kind of. I knew before I entered into the space I was going to enjoy it. I really like that kind of like when an artist takes it upon themselves to control the environment like that. See, I just look at that as layered or dimensions. To be able to like the smell of the cardboard was like when you walked into the space. For me, was really strong. It was like you're kind of in this. You know, it's very unusual to be in an environment made of a material that has that kind of strong pungent odor of such a throwaway disposable material, and the sound and the constant attention to detail,
Yeah.
you know, and that mixture of erotic and sinister and fantasy and dress up. It was definitely something to see.
it was challenging.
Yeah.
There's no doubt, and I'm happier to have seen it. And I think I'm a better person to have seen it and experienced it.
Do you think you would experience it differently the second time?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, because there isn't that. It's a sucker punch.
Yeah.
When you
once,
walk
yeah,
in,
once you
it's,
hit, yeah.
it's a sucker punch, and it's how your body and your experiences. I think as individuals, everyone will look at that exhibition differently.
Yeah.
Because, you know, some people will view a sort of a slightly uncomfortable erotica side to it. Others will view it simply as a child and their imagination.
Yeah.
And it is that challenge that she offers, and she doesn't offer it in a delicate way. It is an absolute punch.
Yeah, it makes no.
And
It's
that's
unapologetic
it.
for sure.
Yeah, and it's it may have made me exceptionally uncomfortable, but good art should do that.
Yeah, I think so. So that was Ella Bertilsson, and it continues to the 16th of February, and I highly recommend it. I love that show.
Also in the dock, we seen Pretty Pickle by Eszter Tzabo, who's, in my opinion, very interesting artist. From seeing the visual art, I didn't know what I was looking at until I read the description, and then I was able to decipher what was happening.
Yeah.
For me, in that one, I loved Sofa. Sofa is, how do I describe it? If you haven't seen it, it's a glitchy video.
Yeah.
Which depicts a sofa pushing against the woman, and she is constantly resisting it so she doesn't get sucked in.
Yeah.
That sofa, to me, can be different parts of a person's life.
Yeah, absolutely.
It can be a bad relationship.
Yeah.
It can be poor financial decisions.
Yeah.
And it can be your fitness, frankly. So
Yeah.
I seen that sofa as multiple different things, but I seen the same person as a person who just is resisting against it. I thought it was, I think I stared at that for about 10 minutes.
Yeah.
What did you think of it?
No, I really liked it as well. And like you were saying, it conjures up all sorts of kind of notions towards, like, from something as simple as a sofa, right? So that's that thing, that wonderful art thing where they take a very mundane object and they use it to symbolize something much larger than itself. And the sofa is like a sofa is a comfortable place, you know? A sofa is a relaxed place. It's a place where you can, you can let your hair down and just sit back. Also, it can be a prison. It could be a trap. It could be like being glued to the sofa or being overwhelmed. It takes on this kind of domestic role where it comes, it's very much in the home and it's very much in the house, and if somebody feels like they're being, now the video kind of is, gives you the sense that that person is fighting against it, that it's somehow trying to resist being sucked into it, you know? And I just think it's a really clever thing by the artist to take something, those two, like there's very little in that video. You know, it's one person. It's like it's probably a couple of seconds on a loop. You know, I could be wrong there actually.
No, it's a loop. Yeah.
It is a loop.
It's a
Yeah,
loop,
it's
yeah.
a couple of seconds on loop, but it comes up on this kind of really powerful imagery, where it kind of like hints. Now, I think you're right. I agree with what you're saying, that it's very much in that kind of overwhelmed, kind of like heavy, kind of like almost like hunted or
Yeah.
kind of feel. You know, it's like somebody who's really resisting. You know. But the interesting part of that is the way that the artwork is layered on top of each other. So you're viewing essentially two works at once. You've kind of got
Yeah.
something in the corner of your eye.
I found it quite interesting that she took imagery of women from the 15th and 16th century
Yeah.
And cut the cutouts.
and cut them out and essentially reintroduced women and feminism from the 15th century to the 21st century.
Yeah.
And that I found very interesting. Why, I'd love to know why she chose the 15th and the 16th century women.
Specifically, yeah. And that kind of like laboured role in the piece, abandoning the testicles. It's very much a laboured position that the main character in it. Now the
Yeah.
video is quite humorous. I think that like we all kind of like went in and we looked at the imagery, and so that's an intentional thing by the artist to create this kind of like almost Monty Python-esque, where it's like you've got like a woman carrying a giant pair of testicles, you know, it's like, it's kind of funny. But then you kind of engage with it, and then all of a sudden it loses that humorous element to it, and it becomes something very different.
Yep.
I think you had a very interesting take on it.
Yeah, I mean, what I done is before I read the description in this page, I just wanted to see what popped up to my mind first. So in that short video, you have a woman, which is from the, what century would you say? I always think like 1930s, I don't know why.
I get you. I
Yeah.
understand, yeah.
She's carrying a scrotum sack, which would go from the top of her head down to below nearly her knees. It's that long and heavy. And she's only able to carry it for so long before she drops it. Because she drops it, she falls, and she gets up and she gives it a boot and walks away from it. To me, that was depicting a woman who's carrying the male testosterone and the male role in the house
Yeah.
for so long
Okay.
that she can't do it any longer.
Yeah.
Which made me think of all different difficult situations women are facing now in the world, from just normal, family ones to the war. Like, it was almost like that woman was like carrying the fatherhood.
Yeah.
And she dropped it, and she wasn't sad when she kicked it. She was annoyed. She was like, I'm not doing this anymore. I'm not expected to be the man in the farm. I'm done with these testicles,
Yeah.
basically.
Yeah, and walks away. See,
She
I
abandoned them.
thought it was really interesting that you were to come at it from that angle. I don't disagree with it at all. I agree with
Yeah.
what you're saying, you know?
When Philip was saying that the lady was pulling the testicles, it was, when you look at it initially, she's actually draped in the testicles.
Right.
So
Okay.
she's covered.
Yeah.
So they're sort of, they're weighing her down as such, and it was
Yeah.
as the short video went along, and I really enjoyed it as a sort of a stop motion as well.
Yeah. Like the anime.
To have that animation, that sort of old fashioned.
Mickey Mouse type.
Yeah,
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 like old
that's
Mickey Mouse type, yeah.
I like that as well. And yeah, she sloughs it off towards the end, and then just sort of kicks them and walks off, and it was very interesting. I mean, there was one bit where, now you two both disagreed with me, but I thought I saw a nipple
On the testicles.
on the testicles. It one of them appeared to be nipple-esque, but but it was that one I found of all of them was possibly the most humorous, and I think that was intentionally playful.
Totally. Yeah, absolutely.
And that was why she chose the animation that she chose, and the way she painted it was very sort of 20s French.
Is the female position relative? Like gender in both of those shows that we've seen today was quite a poignant part of the work.
Yeah.
You know, and like the feeling of like the anxiety and pressure and societal pressures that come in place for a woman.
But actually, that's quite an interesting question you raised there, because if we were not necessarily comparing the two shows, but for me, you have Bertilsson's exhibition, which for me really is, it's discomforting, and it portrays sort of the female sexuality as for the needs of men, if that doesn't make sense. But in the sense of, when you view it, you're viewing these fantasies and these role plays that they're not for the woman, they're not for her, they're for the male gaze. And if you, in my opinion, when I'm looking at it, but if you juxtapose that to Eszter Tzabo, and you see that abandoning the testicles, that's a completely different, that's an embracing of femininity and feminism and womanhood, and literally casting aside, you know, male patriarchy and the essence of the man, which is the testicles. And off she goes as an independent woman.
Okay. Well, that was the show that's on at the Dock at the moment, and that show continues to the 16th of February. I highly recommend it.
Yeah.